Good evening. Before we get started, I'd like to make several announcements. The 6th Annual Cultural Arts Festival, sponsored by the Black Cultural Center, will be Friday, December 5th and 6th at 8 p.m. in Loeb Playhouse on Friday. Also, the BCC's 10th Anniversary Commemorative Conference and First Black Purdue Alumni Reunion will take place on these 2 days, and that will mostly be held in Stewart Center. The keynote speaker will be Julian Bond. Guest performer will be Donald Smith, formerly with Lonnie Liston Smith. The Africana Studies and Research Center is sponsoring a lecture on tomorrow night in Krannert Auditorium at 8 p.m. This is the final lecture in the Martin Luther King lecture series, and the speaker will be anthropologist Benita Jules Rosette, and that's at Krannert Auditorium. The African Students Association presents South Africa, Freedom Rising, and Banking on South Africa, 2 films on Saturday, November 22nd at 7:30 p.m. in room 212 of Stewart Center. All are welcome to come to this. The Graduate Students Academic Coordinating Committee is sponsoring the 2nd Annual Graduate Students Conference at Purdue. This is also Friday and Saturday of this weekend, and that will be held in Krannert Auditorium on Friday and in Stewart Center on Saturday. We have been invited here to hear a very special guest poet. I am pleased and feel privileged to introduce her to you, but before the introduction, I think it is important that we all have some idea of what a poet is. One of the things that a poet is defined as is a maker, a creator, a creative artist of great sensitivity, or simply put, a poet is a writer of poetry. Poetry is for everyone because it is about everyone. It expresses both the ideas and emotions arising from human experience. It is capable of great variety, love and anger, hope and despair, courage and fear, praise and protest, indeed the whole realm of human life. It is a living experience of language, and poetry is meant to be heard. So come to the poet, come to the poet, talk to the woman who takes all the time and makes all the rhymes. This is her hour, and she has the power. Listen to her now. She's got the right word, waiting to be heard. You don't have to find her. She's not very far, and you can drop in on her anytime at all, at all. When you need a friend to see you through, to show you the right way and just what to do, come to the poet, baby. Come to the poet, child. Come to the poet, yeah. And at this time, I invite you to come and hear our very special guest poet, Nikki Giovanni.
I'm really happy to be at Purdue. I took something called Air Wisconsin. Now, you know you're in trouble when you don't recognize the letters, like AA is American. I knew that. UA, and I saw ZW. I thought, Last time I was here, you were having a tornado. I'm delighted that you're no longer having a tornado. It's a lot. It's been, we were having dinner. We were deciding what we were going to do this evening. It's not like that. I shouldn't say it like that. Actually, we prepare very well what we're going to do, and then we decide how we're going to do it, whether you do it nice or whether you do it mean, whatever. But we were having, well, it makes a difference. We were having dinner, and one of the things that we got off on, one of the things that excites me right now, of course, is that Reagan was elected president. It kind of makes my day. I voted for Reagan. I'm kind of happy about it because I was rather bored with Jimmy Carter. He's a tacky-looking dude. He wears his suits badly. Wearing little funny shoes, and it doesn't really matter. Everybody's afraid. I'm kind of fascinated by the black community's reaction to the whole situation, actually, because you would think that we had fared well under Carter. You would think that we all were feeling safe. You would think that the Klan never burned across and nobody ever got shot in the back or something under 4 years. Carter and Jackson, Jesse Jackson, them would run around. You got to vote for Carter because Reagan's going to get you. I would simply submit to the black community, because I know that you hear a lot of other things, that we were not born to be afraid of white men, whether they're named Ronald Reagan or whether they're named George Wallace or anything else. We're not here to be afraid of white men. And I think that it would be a shame if in 1980 all of a sudden you became afraid, that all of a sudden you're thinking, geez, you know, Reagan is a bad guy. He's no different from any of the rest of them. He's going to do what's best for white people. Our job, that's true. That's true. Our job is to do what's best for black people. And if everybody does what's best for everybody, presumably according to the founding fathers of this great nation, we would have competing interests that would force a compromise. And when we sit down to compromise, we would say what we want, and they would say what they're going to give, and we would say, but you don't understand, and they would say, oh, and then we would go on. It's kind of important. I don't want anybody to be, if I could help it, I should say it like that. I don't want anybody to be depressed thinking, well, gee, you know, when Reagan gets to be president, you know, they're going to start to eat us up. They're not. No more so than they have been. And you and I, who are in colleges like Purdue, have a particular responsibility because you are the future leaders of America, black America particularly, and those of us who know our history know that the leaders of black America have been the best leaders that America has had, that you have an obligation to go forward. It is not for you to decide times are going to get tough and I'm going to pull back. Go forward. If you're not going to be able to get into law school because you're black, make them say that. Don't decide you're not going to apply. Or don't take your LSAT and decide, well, I'm tired and I'm going to have a few beers the night before. Assume that you're going to get into law school. Assume that you're going to pass your MedCaps. Assume that the world is out there for you, because if you don't, it won't be. And if it's not out there for you, then who will it be out there for? The black community made a very dear and very great statement in Dade County this year in Miami. We said very clearly we would rather not be kicked to death in the major streets of a major city. We don't like the idea, because the riot in Miami was about McDuffie. No matter what anybody else says, they keep saying, well, gee, there was a riot, but they were looting. No, they weren't looting. They were directly responding to the fact that 5 men that we know killed McDuffie, because everybody admitted that they did that, were let free. If the black community in Greensboro, North Carolina, does something tonight, tomorrow, the next night, we, who are supposed to be understanding, who are supposed to be the intellectual leadership of black America, we must be the ones to say yes, indeed. Because nobody thinks it's a good idea for the Klan to go around shooting people who are walking down the street. It's not right. So that even if you can't do anything, and I'm not suggesting that anybody do anything, I'm simply saying that you've got to put it in your head that it's not our task to tell our people that it's all right to be killed, that you should do that quietly. It's not. If you're following the situation, I think you had one here in Williams, at Williams College, it's not a good idea to burn crosses in front of the Black Student Center. It's not right. And if the students at William, which they have been doing, have responded to that, they're only right to respond to that. If they would be burning crosses here at Purdue, you would be right to respond to that. Because if we let that get out of hand, the next thing you know, somebody's going to get hurt. It is easier to send a message and say, we don't like it, before somebody's hurt. That's what I'm trying to say. And you understand that you don't like it, so don't tell yourself that you don't like it. Tell somebody that it will matter, that you don't like it. We who are black have a right to live in America. We are not here at the sufferance of white America. We are not here because white Americans thought that we were cute and they went and got us. We are here because, that's true, though they did indeed come and get us. We have a right to live in this nation in peace, and I don't care who the president is. I don't care who your senator is. I don't care who's running this university. I don't care any of that. We have a right to exist. And if you and I, who are sent to colleges, who are supposed to be intelligent, cannot make that a clear fact, then we are in far deeper trouble than we recognize. You and I are the leadership. And you recognize that what you want is not unusual. Most of us in this room aren't dreaming of being multimillionaires. We're not thinking of ourselves as one day having 50 or 60 servants to take care of us. What we're looking for is a job. That's not an awful lot to ask in 1980. And it would appear to me to be only proper that you find one. I don't care who the president is. I don't care any of that. I know that you have a right to take care of yourself. It is not right that we live in 1980 with the assumption that somehow we will become wards of the state. We don't want to be wards of the state. We don't want to be on welfare. We don't want to be on unemployment. We want a job. Now, somebody has to provide that job. We have had a history in the United States for the last couple of hundred years. Well, not the last couple of hundred, actually. For the first 200, we were fully employed. We just weren't paid. That's true. They don't mind employing us. We find out that they just don't want to pay us. And we've been having this quarrel, this little low-grade quarrel now, because they say, you know, blacks just want welfare. No, we don't. And nobody can prove to me, nobody can show me that black people want welfare. We have seen that black people want jobs. And you who are black are going to have to continue that message. Black people want education. We are not nearly as well represented, and I'm not picking on Purdue, but we are not nearly as well represented at this institution as we should be. That obviously we will not be able to get jobs unless we're prepared to take jobs. We will not be prepared to take jobs unless we have education. We will not be educated unless we can go to institutions. Therefore, there should be, at the very least, a quota for black people, because the quota functions right now at 0. The quota, and it does, the quota in professional schools functions at 0. So any black, let alone any black woman, that would get into higher education, into graduate school, will have to get there because somebody said we will make a spot. Because the whole idea of, we're going to get out there and compete is foolish, because they know what you look like if you don't know that they know what you look like. And those of us who look like me frequently are denied admission. Those of us who look like me have a hard time just getting into undergraduate school and an even harder time staying. It's true. It's not right. But the least we can do is to recognize that this is not a problem we're facing individually. It's a problem we're facing as a people. And the people is the United States of America. One reason nothing works here is that we have spent the last 100 years protecting the privilege of white men. It can no longer happen. Maybe that's sad, maybe not. I don't think it's sad. But I know that we cannot continue to build a society on the fact that no white boy will fail. Yes, he will. We have failed. Why can't he? Why is he so delicate that the minute that his wife takes a job, he's impotent. He can't function. I don't understand things like that. My father wanted my mother to work because that's the only way they could feed us. There's something to be learned from the black community, and if we weren't prejudiced, we would look to the black community to find out how we live in a changing world. We who are black have a message to send, and a part of that message is that life is precious, that we are not here to kill or to die. We are here to live. And if life is to be meaningful, we are all obviously going to live here together. It is foolish when we look at only 20 years in this century, and that's it, we'll be into the 21st century, that we are still going at each other as if somehow or another we were strangers. We are not strangers. That era, if it ever existed, is well over. We haven't been strangers for the last 500 years. Not since Columbus decided that he was going to come and find out, could he fall off the earth or was he going to go round? We are not strangers. Men and women are not strangers. Black and white people are not strangers. We inhabit a very small planet. One of the things that's been terribly, terribly exciting to me has been Saturn. We know absolutely nothing about that. We miscounted the moons. We don't understand the rings around it. And I think when we finally get through the fog, we're going to find a black guy. Got to. Got to. Got to. Who else would sit there? I bet you that's going to be a ring of pot. You're sitting there just, why not? Why not? Enjoying it. Hey, man, I was waiting for you. No, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's good for planet Earth that we are moving out of planet Earth, and we've got to move out of planet Earth mentality. It's a very small galaxy when you look at it. If Saturn is the end, then what's beyond it? Nobody knows right now. Nobody really is in a position to go. Everybody's kind of afraid, because what would happen if you go beyond our galaxy? You might fall off. If Columbus could go around the Earth, we can go around the galaxy. There has to be something else. And if we continue to sit here in 1980 as if men and women were different, as if black and whites were different, as if Jews and Gentiles were different, we're not going to make any progress, because we will still be arguing about whether or not a woman has a right to her own body. Of course she does. Abortion has never disturbed men. It's just something that they talk about. Because the minute that their girlfriends or their one-night stands get pregnant, they suggest it. Is that true? It's true. All men support abortion. You just don't want the woman that you want to have your child to have an abortion. That's the difference. That's something you two should work out. Don't stand there pontificating self-righteously. Men have never been pregnant. It's not a problem that they face. It's true. I submit that if the Supreme Court could impregnate a woman, we'd have a different situation on abortion. Sure we would. Sure we would. You know it. Of course we would. All the difference in the world. But the issue essentially is, can women control their bodies? Of course they can. I think that men should be able to control theirs too. I'm very much in favor. Any male has a right to say no. Black men think that they don't have a right to say no. They think that they should just keep going until they fall out. That's true. That's not nice, but that's true. Sure. Who are you proving something to? It is you. It is you who has to decide that you're a man. It is not a provable situation. It is an internal situation. It is we who have to decide that we are women. And some of us will love men and marry them, and some of us won't. We will still be women. Some of us will love women and marry them, and some of us won't, and we will still be men. Some of us will be soldiers who are men, and some of us will not, but we will still be men and women. And essentially, there's not that much difference. If I cut myself, nobody can say that's the blood of a woman. All they know is that it's human blood. And if we continue to explore animals in the way that we should, we're not so sure that there's a big difference. I don't see the difference between a human being and any other mammal. I don't see that I am any different as a mother from a mother seal. I don't see that she feels any less pain when we go up to the Arctic Circle and destroy her children because the fur is pretty than I would feel if someone destroyed my son. I don't see the difference. I don't see why, as a mammal, we have decided that the whales can be eliminated, that we no longer need them. I, as a black woman, feel very, very, very akin to a whale because there are people who would like to make me extinct. It's the same thing. And I think if the human experiment is going to mean anything to the cosmos, it's going to mean that we understand that all of life is about the living. I think that if poetry is to have any meaning, if this century really is to have any meaning, it is going to be that we come into a concept that we are alive and life is precious. And we can allow other people to lead their own lives. It tickles me sometimes because I notice now that Anita Bryant had a problem with Bob Greene. I love her. All of a sudden, it was acceptable to be divorced. All of a sudden, little Miss Molly Homemaker, who's running around the country telling you and me what we should do for men, all of a sudden didn't like her husband. She was tired of him, so she got a divorce. And in getting a divorce, she found out that life is cold, that it is difficult for single women alone who have children, who don't have a job. So she went out and got herself a millionaire. Now, I submit, and I may be wrong, I don't know and don't care, but I submit that Anita didn't wait until she got married to find out what she was buying, and he didn't wait either. So I don't want to hear it. No, she didn't. So I don't want to hear it, and I'm glad she found a millionaire, if that's what she wants to do, but prostitution is prostitution. What's the difference? What's the difference? It is. What's the difference? She sold herself for a ring and probably a lot more money than the ladies walking the streets. But that doesn't mean we look down on the ladies walking the streets. We recognize that they don't have many options. And that it's not right, whether we call it marriage or whether we call it street walking, to make a woman sell herself in order to eat. It's not right. And if we're going to move on, if the human experiment is going to mean anything, we are going to begin to empathize with each other and recognize even when we can't change situations, we can at least recognize that it's not right. We don't have to pretend that somehow or another we are better. What kind of people are we? And I watch it right now because it's going to get to be another big problem with the homosexuals. You keep watching people and they say, well, I'm not gay. Well, good for you. I'm delighted for whoever isn't gay. But that doesn't have any meaning. What right does that give you to tell somebody they can't have a job, or they can't teach in a school, or they can't have an apartment? What kind of people are we? That at the end of our lives, when we have to answer for what we did, we say, well, I never had an abortion, I'm not gay. What kind of people are we? That has to be something different. I'm not advocating anything. I'm not urging anybody to go out. I'm just saying that other people have a right to lead their lives, that we are not here to feel better about ourselves because of what we didn't do. We are here to feel good about ourselves of what we tried. Christopher Columbus was lucky because the world wasn't flat. But some of us are going to hang on the edge and some of us are going to fall. That's a part of life too, but it is better to fall doing something than to sit and just end up covered with bed sores, covered with rot. That people sit and say, I never did anything, I never tried, I never made a mistake. The only way you can do that is you never did anything. If the worst thing that happens to you, and it's one of the sadder things certainly, is that you will love somebody who doesn't love you or appreciate you. That will happen to all of us. That really is somebody else's loss. It's not your problem. Your problem is to find somebody to love. If they love you back, you're lucky. If they don't, that's their problem. You go on and find somebody else to love. And if you spend the next 50 years collecting people that you love, you will be the winner. Because it isn't about what you get back, it's what you put out. And I think that when we begin to look at human beings, we realize how stupid it is that we're all so gimme, gimme, gimme. Everybody's into what they want, but nobody's into what they'll give. It won't work anymore. If it ever worked, and I'm not so sure that it did, it is useless right now. We have to say, what can I give? How can I contribute? How can I be there for other things which are living? if we want to just take it on a slow level, start with other human beings that we know. Most of us sleep with people that we don't like. Most of us share living quarters with people that we don't know and don't care to know. Most of us will have children that we will not understand and have parents that we will not want to be bothered with because, after all, they're old and sick and are always asking questions. That's so bad and so wrong and so backwards. Most of us will live our lives spiritually impoverished. We will live our lives with nothing coming back into us because we're so afraid that if we give something, somebody will take advantage of us. We're taking advantage of ourselves in a very negative way when we don't open up. Life has to be about the opening up. And I think that as we look at it, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, in the next 4 or 5 years. It's going to be interesting. We're going to find out something about space. We're going to find out something about earthlings, which we are. We're going to make some decisions about what shall and shall not live because we have that power, unfortunately. But we do have it. And it's going to be up to you and me to at least make a decision, I should hope, for life. At least to understand somebody's pain and to be willing to share somebody's joy. Human beings are funny people, you know. If you have a problem, anybody, strangers, will listen to your problem. If you have a bad day, you say, how was your day? Oh, it's really bad. Let me buy you a beer. Everybody understands the problem. But if you have a good day, if something goes right and you just, start smiling at folks, everybody, what's wrong with her? Totally suspect. Nobody trusts you when you're happy. You're afraid to say, I made an A on my paper, my boyfriend called me. You're really afraid to say, I'm happy today, because you feel that somebody will try to take it away from you. If we continue as we have been, we will not deserve the right to live, really. The earth will not be the poorer if mankind were not on it. I can't help but believe, as a matter of fact, that it would improve immeasurably. We could probably clear up the air, clear up the water. We would quit digging up holes in the ground. We could do better. Human beings are lucky that Earth can't vote on us. It's true. We are. Because we surely would lose the vote. People would be sorry. The trees would be very, I'm sorry, but you understand my... Sure. We can do better. I just can't believe that what we've seen in the last, almost 2,000 years of Christian civilization, in the last 1,000,000 or so years of being upright, that this is all that we have to show for it. That selfish, myopic, narrow-minded view of what it is to be alive, to be a human being. If we're not going to do any better, then what really do we deserve? I can't believe that we deserve anything. And if I weren't a human being, it wouldn't even disturb me. I would be the first. I hope, really, if something happens, I hope that I'm one of the last, because I'm one of those people like, I told you. It's true. Because we can do better. We can at least do better where we are. Maybe we can't change the whole damn world. Maybe that's not possible. But we can do better where we are. We can begin the process of saying, I will talk because I know how to talk. I will talk to you and I will listen because I know how to listen. I will care because I want someone to care for me. That's selfish. But that's at least a beginning. At least we will begin to put out what we want to bring back in. And I think that that's what life has to be about. I think the task of your generation, because you are taking us, really, into the 21st century. You will be there. You will be just slightly older than I am now. As the new century comes in, we've got to have a new idea. We are still living with a 15th century idea of what Earth is and what human beings are. We've got to have a new idea. We've got to have a new idea of our relationship to things that we don't know. I remember that Sperry Rand ad, which I love. It's one of the few ads on television that I really love, and they have the space module landing on the moon. And they say, how long will you have to look at a living organism before you recognize it? And I would submit, with no prejudice to anyone, that if we send the same white boys that we've been sending forever, because they don't recognize you and me, how can they recognize something else? So that you and I have a task and a challenge. One, we have to improve their vision. Two, we ourselves have to go. It is more than time. We are overdue for a black explorer. We have not had great black explorers. Black people are very comfortable with Earth, and I think that's charming. And we're very nice. No, we are. We begin to feel excited if we go to Indianapolis. Oh, I do. I went to Indianapolis this week. It's true. It's true. Let alone Chicago. That's it for life. No, we've got to think about it. We've got to decide that there is something beyond Saturn, and you and I should be the ones to bring back the message. I'm tired of somebody else telling me what the world looks like. You and I have to do that. We have to do it in our heads. Some of us will have to do it. I doubt that at your age you won't make a good astronaut. But your children will have to be prepared to do it. We'll have to keep saying that there's more to it, that it cannot stop here. The whole idea of life cannot stop here. Some of you will do philosophy. Some of you will do law. When you do law, consider intergalactic law. It hasn't even come up yet. We've not quite gotten to it. We just really are basically getting into really good maritime law. But think about intergalactic law, because we're going to have a way to relate. And I see no reason why we're going to have to go to war with somebody we don't even know, on a planet we never even heard of, before we can figure out a way to talk to them. We've already done that. We in the United States went to war with the people nobody spoke their language. We didn't know if they were giving up or what, because nobody could talk to them. We surely don't want to repeat that experience. We want to do something different. Some of you can think of something different. It is insufficient that we say, I made it through Purdue. I'm happy that you do. That's better than not. But we have to get beyond that. That's all I'm trying to say. That there has to be something more than what we now see, or I would grant you your boredom. I think this is a very bored generation for the most part. It's a very laid-back generation. It's a very, you hold yourselves very tight. You're not a very generous, emotionally generous generation. So I think that you're going to have to say there's something new, there's something different, and I am going to go out, and I'm going to try to get it. I'm going to see what it's all about. The worst that can happen is you'll find yourself in Lafayette, Indiana. That's true. The worst that can happen is that you find yourself right back here, or in Indianapolis, or Cincinnati, or Louisville, or someplace. That's the worst that can happen. The best that can happen is that you may find yourself with the red sun, since we have a yellow one, or the blue sun. You may find yourself on the planet Krypton. And you say, damn, Nikki said this could happen. Why not? I'm just saying that it's overdue that we took a chance on life. We tried everything else. It's overdue. And I think that I'm very proud of my profession, because when we function well, one of the areas that we function in is the spirit, is the heart of mankind. And everybody laughs at, well, you poets. Well, sure. Somebody has to be for that which is soft, because everybody's for that which is hard. There's never any question that we're going to fund, the new MX missile or the new bomb or the new this, that, and we can find 5,000 ways to kill people. Nobody thinks that's strange. But if we said, hey, how about a poetry institute? We go, what? It's time that we dealt with that which is soft, because a human being is a very soft animal. We are largely, if it would not be for our brain, we are largely unprotected. We've got to do something else. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm going to read some poetry. I wrote a poem because I'm crazy. I admit that. I wrote a poem to my car. I have a very nice car. Very nice car. For those of us who love cars, I'm basically a Midwestern. I was born in Tennessee and I grew up in Cincinnati. And for those of us who did things like that, you know that essentially what you have is a car. You're a car freak, because that's the only way to get around. There's no such thing as, public transportation. They keep talking public transportation. There's no public transportation where I grew up. One of the things that I did about 5 years ago was I bought myself a diesel engine. And for those of you who are into diesel engines, they're really so nice. I think it's an ideal car for a woman, because there's nothing to do. You put the fuel in, it comes out. You change your oil when the light goes on. That's it. With the gas engine, you got points, plugs, this, that, and the other. Carburetor has to be adjusted and all that. Who knows? You have to get somebody to take care of it. So I bought a Peugeot diesel, and it's a standard shift. And I put, my radio and my tape, and I put back speakers in, and now I have an amplifier. So I go down the road, and I turn it up real loud. And if you want to think, or at least if you're like me, one of the nice things to do is just to get on the road and see where it goes. And you might end up, if you go north, you'll end up in Detroit on 75. If you go south, you'll end up in Florida. And it's really very nice, because all you can do is just daydream up and down the road, and that's what I like to do. So I wrote a poem for my car, because I love my car, and I thought, like anything else that I love, I should let it know. Why should I hide that? I love you, car. Fine. We never tell what we love that we love it, so I figured we'll start with the car, and we'll work on our way up to the dogs and then the boy, You don't want to jump into it. So I wrote a poem called the Beep Beep Poem. I should write a poem, but there's almost nothing that hasn't been said and said and said. Beautifully, ugly, blandly, excitingly. Stay in school, make love not war, death to all tyrants, and where have all the flowers gone? And don't they understand at Kent State that the troopers will shoot again? I could write a poem because I love walking in the rain and the solace of my naked body in a tub of warm water. Cleanliness may not be next to godliness, but it sure feels good. I wrote a poem for my father, but it was so constant I burned it up. He hates change. I'm baffled by sameness. I composed a ditty about Encore American and Worldwide News, but the editorial board said no one would understand it. as if people have to be tricked into sensitivity, though of course they do. I love to drive my car hours on end along backcountry roads. I love to stop for ciders, an apple, an acorn squash, 3 for $1. I love my CB when the truckers talk and the hum of the diesel in my ear. I love the aloneness of the road when I ascend descending curves. The power within my toe delights me, and I fling my spirit down the highway. I love the way I feel when I pass the moon and I holler to the stars. I'm coming through, beep, beep. I'm a peppermint freak. I eat peppermint because I smoke too much, as some of you who have spent some time with me. I really do. And I keep saying I'm gonna cut down. And for those of us who don't smoke, it really, you shouldn't, because it's really a filthy habit. But for those of us who do, it seems to be very hard to break. So I got into peppermint. I said, well, what I do, every time I want a cigarette, I'll put a piece of peppermint in my mouth. Then I buy it by the pound. Now my face broke out and everything. Not only that, but no, it's true. What you do, then what I started to do, I don't say what you do, what I started to do was to then do 2 pieces of peppermint, right? And then I ended up, of course, doing 2 pieces of peppermint and still lighting a cigarette. I mean, it's disgusting. It is. You can't win. Oh, there's something. I guess I should have more self-control. I shouldn't say I couldn't win. I just can't. You miss a cigarette, you know what I mean? And it's a terrible, terrible habit. And I heard a thing this morning on AM America. They showed you, what your lungs look like. And my son is like everybody. Well, my son's 11, and he's like all the kids because I think all kids are anti-smoking. And he says, hey, you see what your lungs look like? I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to die. I say all that because my mouth is dry, and it's the peppermint. So maybe I should just cut out the peppermint. The hell with the peppermint. That's terrible. This is a poem that is one of my very favorite poems, as a matter of fact. It's a poem called Ego Tripping. I was born in the Congo. I walked to the Fertile Crescent and built the Sphinx. I designed a pyramid so tough that a star that only glows every 100 years falls into the center, giving divine, perfect light. I am bad. I sat on the throne drinking nectar with Allah. I got hot and sent an ice age to Europe to cool my thirst. My oldest daughter is Nefertiti. The tears from my birth pains created the Nile. I am a beautiful woman. I gazed on the forest and burned out the Sahara Desert. With a packet of goat's meat and a change of clothes, I crossed it in 2 hours. I am a gazelle. So swift, you can't catch me. For a birthday present when he was 3, I gave my son Hannibal an elephant. He gave me Rome for Mother's Day. My strength flows ever on. My son Noah built Newark, and I stood proudly at the helm as we sailed on a soft summer day. I turned myself into myself and was Jesus, men intone my loving name. All praises, I am the one who would save. I sowed diamonds in my backyard. My bowels deliver uranium. The filings from my fingernails are semi-precious jewels. On a trip north, I caught a cold and blew my nose, giving oil to the Arab world. I am so hip, even my errors are correct. I sailed west to reach east and had to round off the earth as I went. The hair from my head thinned and gold was laid across 3 continents. I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. I cannot be comprehended except by my permission. I mean, I can fly like a bird in the sky. This is an older poem. It's called Revolutionary Dreams. I did a series. Of women, what I consider to be women's poems, mostly just because women, I think, don't write about women a lot, and we're doing a lot better. Women are writing a lot more about women, and we could use a lot more women writers. I mean, we won't get too many. But I started a trilogy. This is a part of the trilogy. And as I look down, I'm also going to read the last poem that I did, which is also a poem on women in the 1970s. It's a poem called Revolutionary Dreams. I used to dream militant dreams of taking over America to show these white folks how it should be done. I used to dream radical dreams of blowing everyone away with my perceptive powers of correct analysis. I even used to think I'd be the one to stop the riot and negotiate the peace. Then I awoke and dug that if I dreamed natural dreams of being a natural woman, doing what a woman does when she is natural, I would have a revolution. I think it's the hardest thing to be is just who you are. Everybody changes you. Everybody. I would love you if you would lose weight, dye your hair, cut it. There's always something. If you notice that, always one little thing, and it's always one little thing that no matter what you do, you can't do it. I lost a boyfriend over cigarettes. That's the truth. I mean, it was no loss, what the hell. But, no, I mean, it's like, if you're going to go out with me, you can't. So I said, hey, now, wait a minute. I know what I'm going to get when I light a cigarette. We're never sure when you walk through that door, That's true. That's true. It's not nice. I will grant you that, but it's true. This is it's a poem from my latest book. Actually, I'm going to hold it up because it's so pretty. I love it. They finally did a cover that I like. It's actually a children's book. It's called Vacation Time. My son said to me, I don't know, some of you will grow up to be writers or something, and the last person to know or to care what you do, I think, is maybe your kid, and then next to that is your mother. Because, to them, you are just mom and their daughter, you know what I mean? And my son said to me 2 years ago, when I had to go over to the school for, like, the mother-son program where you come and you tell them what you do. So Tommy said to me, well, are you coming over to school? I said, what for? He says, well, other parents are volunteering. I said, how should I volunteer? Because, Thomas had just never paid any attention to what I do. He didn't like to come to readings or anything. I thought, well, kid doesn't know what I do. What does he think I do? He says, well, you're a writer, aren't you? I said, yes, I'm right. I'm a writer. He says, well, you're going to come over and read some poetry. I said, fine, I'll do that. So I went, but the book that I had was a book called Spin a Soft Black Song, which is the first book I did. It's the book that I did for him that he hasn't yet to read, as far as I know. So that's true. So when I was reading from that, he stuck his little hand up. Yes, he said, why don't you write something for us? I said, now, who would us be? Because you never know what kids are talking about when they say, who is us, Thomas? He says, big kids who can read. I said, oh, okay, we'll work on a book. So I began to work on Vacation Time. One of the things that I got out of him, I said, well, if you want me to do a book, you have to help me. He says, well, I don't write. I said, that's okay, because you read, okay? And if you read, you'll tell me what you like and what you don't like. I'll pay you $1 a poem. Kid threw out 15 poems right away. I don't like that. That's not good enough, I mean, the whole could have killed him. Could have destroyed him. One of the poems that we both agreed on, thank God, which turns out to be one of my very favorite in this book, is a poem called The Stars, because I'm in love with the heavens. Across the dark and quiet sky, when sunbeams have to go to bed, the stars peep out and sparkle up. Occasionally they fall. They dance the ballet of the night. They pirouette and boogie down. In blue and red and blue-white dress, they hustle through the night. The fairies play among the stars. They ride on carpets of gold dust, and dawn's gray fingers shake them off. Occasionally they fall. I love that. Don't look now. I'm fading away into the gray of my mornings, or the blues of every night. Is it that my nails keep breaking, or maybe the corn on my second little piggy? Things keep popping out on my face or of my life. It seems no matter how I try, I become more difficult to hold. I'm not an easy woman to want. They have asked the psychologists, psychiatrists, politicians, and social workers what this decade will be known for. There is no doubt. It is loneliness. If loneliness were a grape, the wine would be vintage. If it were a wood, the furniture would be mahogany. But since it is life, it is cotton candy on a rainy day, the sweet, soft essence of possibility, never quite maturing. I have prided myself on being in that great tradition, albeit circus, that the show must go on, though in my community the vernacular is, one monkey don't stop the show. We all line up at some midway point to thread our way through the boredom and futility, looking for the blue ribbon and gold medal. Mostly these are seen as food labels. We are consumed by people who sing the same old song, stay, as sweet as you are, in my corner, or perhaps just a little bit longer. But whatever you do, don't change. Baby, baby, don't change. Well, something needs to change. Everything, some say, will change. I need a change of pace, face, attitude, and life, though I long for my loneliness. I know I need something or someone, or I strangle my words as easily as I do my tears. I stifle my screams as frequently as I flash my smile. It means nothing. I am cotton candy on a rainy day, the unrealized dream of an idea unborn. I share with the painters the desire to put a three-dimensional picture on a one-dimensional surface. wrote this particular poem. It's called Mothers. I sort of wrote it for my mother, and I sort of didn't. But it was one of those things that, I don't know if you've gone through it yet. I got into my mother, I guess this is, 3 or 4, 5 years ago, because you don't ever think, I don't want to speak for you. I didn't think about it. I mean, she was your mother, you love her, that's it. And you never thought, well, gee, maybe you should say it, or maybe you should let her know. It was just like she knows. I mean, the assumption is always, of course, that the people that we love know that we love them. And I wanted to do something beyond just like, hi, I love you. You know what I mean? I just wanted to do something to say, well, before, my grandmother used to say all the time, don't send me flowers when I'm dead. And it seems that we always do that. Men and women do it all the time. We will never admit, I really like having you around. It's only when, well, the expression is, of course, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry. But that's a rather crude way of putting it. But we always, when we lose them, say, gee, it was really you all along. But who knows that? How could you tell? Nobody ever stopped to say it. So I wanted to write a poem for someone that I cared about, that I just wanted to say, hey, I really do. I really like you. If you were for sale, I'd buy, That just because I happened to have been born, I would choose you anyway. So I wrote a poem called Mothers. The last time I was home to see my mother, we kissed, exchanged pleasantries and unpleasantries, pulled a warm, comforting silence around us, and read separate books. I remembered the first time I consciously saw her. We were living in a 3-room apartment on Burns Avenue. Mommy always sat in the dark. I don't know how I knew that, but she did. That night, I stumbled into the kitchen, maybe because I've always been a night person, or perhaps because I had wet the bed. She was sitting on a chair. The room was bathed in moonlight, diffused through tiny window panes. She may have been smoking, but maybe not. Her hair was 3/4 her height, which made me a strong believer in the Samson myth, and very black. I'm sure I just hung there by the door, and I remember thinking, what a beautiful lady. She was very deliberately waiting, perhaps for my father to come home from his night job, or maybe for a dream that had promised to come by. Come here, she said, I'll teach you a poem. I see the moon sees me. God bless the moon, and God bless me. I taught that to my son, who recited it to her, just to say, we must learn to bear the pleasures as we have borne the pains. Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're black. You always remember things like living in Woodlawn with no inside toilet. And if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself, and how good the water felt when you got your bath from one of those big tubs that folk in Chicago barbecue in. And somehow, when you talk about home, it never gets across how much you understood their feelings, as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale. And even though you remember, your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock, and another dream goes. And though you're poor, it isn't poverty that concerns you. And though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that makes any difference, but only that everybody is together, and you and your sister have happy birthdays and very good Christmases. And I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand black love is black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy. I'm going to read a couple of love poems because it is fun to fall in love, that's the truth. As opposed to loving somebody, something like, I'm just like, I want you. You know what I mean? That has its charm. And it does. If you don't take it too seriously for too long, it can be quite pleasant, especially in the winter because it gets cold. I never did see why people, that's true. It's so illogical to fall in love in the summer. Don't you think it's already warm and sticky and, people are irritable? You need a friend in the winter. Your feet are cold, you don't want to have to go worried about, hanging out in singles bars or something. You need, That's true. I wrote a little poem called Winter Poem, which is a kind of a backwards love poem, but it's a love poem. Once, a snowflake fell on my brow, and I loved it so much, and I kissed it, and it was happy, and called its cousins and brothers, and a web of snow engulfed me then. I reached to love them all, and I squeezed them, and they became a spring rain, and I stood perfectly still and was a flower. So, yeah. It wasn't a dirty poem after. Everybody was looking for a dirty poem. I only want to be there to kiss you as you want to be kissed when you need to be kissed, where I want to kiss you because it's my house, and I plan to live in it. I really need to hug you when I want to hug you as you like to hug me. Does this sound like a silly poem? I mean, it's my house, and I want to fry pork chops and bake sweet potatoes and call them yams because I run the kitchen, and I can stand the heat. I spent all winter in carpet stores gathering patches so I could make a quilt. Does this really sound like a silly poem? I mean, I want to keep you warm. And my windows might be dirty, but it's my house. And if I can't see out sometimes, they can't see in either. English isn't a good language to express emotion through. Mostly, I imagine, because people try to speak English instead of trying to speak through it. I don't know. Maybe this is a silly poem. I'm saying it's my house, and I'll make fudge and call it love, and touch my lips to the chocolate warmth, and smile at old men and call that revolution, because what's real is really real. And I still like men in tight pants, because everybody has something to give, and more important, needs something to take. And this is my house, and you make me happy. So this is your poem. Have you all seen, we were talking at dinner. I guess I do sound like a dirty old lady sometimes. We were talking at dinner, though, speaking of that. Have you all seen the Jim Palmer ad that he does for, I think it's jockey shorts? You know what I'm talking about? It's in Time and Newsweek and stuff. It's very respectable. I'm not talking about, an X-rated magazine. But he does it. He's got these brief. Jim Palmer is the pitcher for Baltimore. And, of course, if Baltimore had that for a uniform, they'd never have to worry about the gate. I mean, absolutely. So Palmer was voted the sexiest man in sports this year. You are not aware of that. It made Time magazine. Time is respectable. And they asked him why did he think that he was voted the sexiest man in sports. He said, I think they've seen more of men. Right. Absolutely, I don't know. I think that's one of the nice things about women's lib is that now women are going to be allowed to be just as bad as men are. We're going to, why not? It's not going to hurt anybody. It's something to do. I wrote a poem for a friend of mine who's a nice guy, as a matter of fact. Some of you probably know people like him, as a matter of fact. He's an intellectual. The problem with intellectuals is that everything has to cycle through their head. It's just no gut reaction to anything, If they fall in love, it's, oh, my heart is beating fast. I must be in love. They're going to think everything through, right? I had a friend, I fall in love, as you probably gathered, easily. I find that it, makes my day. I have I'm easy because, one, I don't expect anybody to fall back in love with me. As a matter of fact, that frequently can complicate things because then they take up your time. That's true, and who's got the time to spend? What you want is to be in love and, forget about, working it out. And you'll learn that when you get to be my age, you'll find out that reciprocity has nothing to do with anything. You just do it, you fall in love. However, in this particular case, I was interested in what he thought about the idea of being in love with me. Now, he's one of those hard people to talk to because, one, he's not a frivolous human being. I tend to be, at least I can laugh. How guys, and especially in the 60s, for those of you who remember the 60s, some of us are old enough, but you remember guys were 24-hour-a-day revolutionaries. They didn't smile. Are you going out with me tonight or not? It's that whole, they didn't laugh. They just didn't have time because they were 24-hour-a-day revolutionaries. I was only 23-hour-a-day revolutionary. One day I wanted, that 1 hour I thought we should laugh and get something going. What do you mean? So I thought the best way to talk to him, because he's a reading freak, is to write a poem. And then he would read the poem and he'd go, oh. It worked. That's exactly what he did. It's a poem called Communication. Sometimes the only way to do it is to do it directly. You have to tell him, I want you. Be here. And, oh. Works out. Guys do it all the time. We think it's charming. I'm sure that they will, too. They're tired of being aggressed all the time. I wrote a poem called Communication. If music is the most universal language, think of me as one whole note. If science has the most perfect symbol, picture me as MC squared. Since mathematics can speak to the infinite, imagine me as 1 to the first power. What I mean is, one day, I'm going to grab your love and you'll be satisfied. Send a message. I'm going to end on my dirty poem. It's a poem my mother hates, and she's just about forced me to give a disclaimer. I would say, in all honesty, this is not a personal poem. You've heard me, you know, when it's a personal poem, I wrote this poem for. This is not a personal poem. It's a very impersonal poem based upon my observation. So for those of you who see my mother say, you know, she read that poem, but she explained that it's not personal. No, mothers are so embarrassed. You'll see, you know, wait till you become famous. Mothers get so embarrassed, you know, because they want all of their friends to think that you're, you know, nice and right and proper and all that. And then they get daughters like me, you know, just run around the country, yeah, you know. I heard Nikki the other night. So I'm going to read that day because I think it's a good idea to have a day like that. If you've got a key, then I've got the door. Let's do what we did when we did it before. If you've got the time, I've got the way. Let's do what we did when we did it all day. You get the glass, I've got the wine. We'll do what we did when we did it overtime. If you've got the dough, then I've got the heat. We can use my oven until it's warm and sweet. Now, I know I'm bold coming on like this, but the good things in life are too good to be missed. Now, time is money, and money is sweet. If you're busy, baby, we can do it on our feet. We can do it on the floor. We can do it on the stair. We can do it on the couch. We can do it in the air. We can do it in the grass, and in case we get an itch, I can scratch you with my left hand because I'm really quite a witch. If we do it, terrible. If we do it once a month, we can do it in time. If we do it once a week, we can do it in rhyme. If we do it every day, we can do it every way. We can do it like we did it when we did it that day.
Thank you, Nikki. It's always a pleasure to have you here as our very special guest poet. And I think all of you would agree with me in saying we'd love to have you back again. There will be a reception for Nikki Giovanni immediately after the question and answer session in the East-West Faculty Lounge in the Purdue Memorial Union. In your two middle aisles, there will be ushers with microphones for the question and answer session. So there will be about a 10-minute question and answer session with Nikki.
Maybe you don't have any questions or comments. You can make comments. Yeah. There she comes.
Thank you. You talked about revolution a lot in your poetry. Has there been any progress in the revolution in the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think that there's been some progress. You know, I don't think that America, I will be surprised, but not unhappy one way or the other, that we're ever going to go through another 1776 or another civil war. But I think that it has been necessary to send a message. And I think when you look at 1954, from the Brown decision to the resignation of Nixon, that you have seen that America is capable of change. They just don't like it. And I just think that we have to keep reminding them that one, change is necessary, and two, it doesn't really hurt. You know, a lot of things, and being black, one of the things that you heard, okay, when Montgomery bus boycott started, and everybody said, oh, God, if you let them sit any place that you want to sit on a bus, you know, the next thing you know, they'll be out of hand. And, of course, you know, once black people could sit any place on a bus, that's all it was, getting on a bus. I feel the same way about quotas today. I think the quotas are the same situation. That once we allow and encourage black people to go to graduate school, because it has to happen, everybody's going to say, gee, I don't know why we didn't do it. Why Mommy, how come they fought against that? Because that's just as normal. I feel the same way about housing patterns, that once we allow people to live any place that they want to live, that the banks quit redlining, everybody won't understand. Nobody will understand why that didn't happen before. Because all it is somebody's fear of somebody else's progress. And that's so foolish. And the revolution will occur as we who are victims of that fear resist that and encourage those who are fearful to grow up. That's all, grow up. I wondered what those things were when I was coming in. I could not. I saw them and I thought, you know, what a great walkie-talkie they had. Now, I left my glasses on my desk in Cincinnati, so if somebody does have hand up, I don't see that well without them. So it's true. I know most of my poetry. That's why I can get away with it, but otherwise I'm squinting tonight.
Did you read Michelle Wallace's book, Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman?
Yeah, where was that coming from?
Right here.
Okay. I told you, I was serious. Yes, I did.
How did you feel about her critique of your works?
Oh, I thought the book was sickening. I did. I read it on an empty stomach, and I would recommend for those of us who haven't, that's the only way to read it. Otherwise, you're going to mess up the book. No, it's true. I didn't really quite understand what Michelle's point was. I know that, which is apropos of nothing other than a reality, she dated a young man who worked for me and never once came up to the office. I mean, all while she was working on a book, you know, she never once said, well, I'd like to talk to you. I'm working on a book, and I'm going to, you know, slam you up against the wall, because I didn't care what she had to say in that respect. I didn't think that the book was historically accurate, though. I don't see why just to that section, just to the myth of the black superwoman, because the book is, do we know the book? You're not missing anything, that's all I can honestly say. It's 2 essays. One is Black Macho, and the other is The Myth of the Superwoman. To start with Black Macho, it was just historically inaccurate. Her synthesis of the 60s was that all black men, and I'm quoting, all black men wanted in the 60s was a white woman in every bed and a black woman under every heel. And I end of quote. Now, if we can accept that as a historical statement, then somebody's crazy. You know, I absolutely cannot believe that that's all that Rap Brown wanted, or Stokely Carmichael wanted, or Huey Newton. I just can't. That all the people who marched from Selma, you know, to Montgomery, to Miami, to Albany, Georgia, I can't believe that that's all black men wanted. And I think that Michelle's hostility overcame her sense of history, that we just can't look at the men of the 60s. If ever black men have had a shining moment as a group, because we've had individual, please, I hope nobody misunderstands, we have had individual black men who are just absolutely outstanding. But as a group, we had a group movement in the 60s that could only be compared to the Garvey movement. We had a shining moment in the 60s, and I don't see how we could be black men and not just be terrifically proud of that period. And to have Michelle say that it was all about a white woman in every bed and a black woman under every hill, I couldn't accept that. You know, absolutely rejected the myth, the black macho. I think that black men are not macho. Black men are as afraid as anybody else, that they are simply trying to hold on to themselves. There are problems that black men have with their self-esteem. There's no question about it. There are problems that black women have with their self-esteem. There are problems that we who are white have, male and female, with our self-esteem. That goes on and on. There are problems that we who are Iranian, Indian, we all have a problem. And I didn't think that Michelle was quite fair or quite accurate to say that somehow or another it was black macho that destroyed the 60s. Somehow or another she can forget that the FBI shot down people, that the local police departments killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, that people were arrested right and left. How could she forget that? I mean, I couldn't forget that. I can't understand how she could write that as history. But when we got to the myth of the superwoman, I disagreed absolutely with the title. If ever there is a superwoman, she is the black woman. There's no question in my mind about it. When you look at what we've done, and I'm just saying on the history, when you look at what we've done with nothing, if you read a book called Beautiful Also, or The Souls of My Black Sisters by Dr. Jean Noble, you will get to a point, and of course Jean's book is beautiful, it's beautifully written, but she talks about Middle Passage. And she uses it as an image not only coming from Africa to the United States, that Middle Passage, but that we are currently in Middle Passage. The black woman has been the woman of the world, whether you're looking in Africa, in Asia, and because that is a black woman also, or whether you're looking in the United States of America. You know, Michelle restricted herself, I think, improperly. First of all, that was Gloria Steinem's idea, and if you read the first edition, for those of you who follow feminist literature, if you go back and get the first edition of Ms. Magazine, you will see that Gloria says there are 10 myths that she no longer will deal with. And I think about number 7, if I'm not mistaken, number 6, was the myth of the black superwoman. That's no myth. We are. Anytime women want to be women, all they have to do is follow what we've done, because we've done it with absolutely nothing. I disagree with that. Number 2, I disagree that there were only 2 black women in the 60s that were worth dealing with, as she put it. I don't even see how she came up with me and Angela Davis as the only 2 women of the 60s. Those are not the women that if I was writing about the 60s, I would not choose me as the woman of the 60s. She did that because I am a woman of the 70s. I am so very much a woman of the 70s that it becomes useful to her book to use me. I'm not a woman of the 60s. I was standing in Walgreens like everybody else. There's nothing in my history It's true. I picketed, but no, I'm talking about when I had control of myself. I am not of the 60s at all. I'm coming out of the 60s. I was a student in the 60s, and it was only based on my popularity in the 70s that she decided to include me as one of the women. But it's bad history. To say that the only reason Angela Davis took the position that she took was that she lusted for George Jackson. That's what she said. That's what Michelle said. That Angela Davis lusted for George Jackson, and that's why she took that revolutionary position, is to wipe out the girl's history. How could you treat Angela Davis like that? How could you lust for anybody like that? I mean, that's ridiculous. What kind of fantasy world? That's true. I mean, I don't know where Michelle is living. But you see, one of the things when you read the book, if I had edited it, which I didn't, of course, one of the things I would have done was taken the last 10 pages and put them at the front of the book. Because what she said was she had eczema until she was 16. Do you know eczema? Okay. Which meant that she didn't have very many dates because most people don't like to date girls who are shingling off on them. That's true. Now, I'm not laughing at Michelle. I'm just trying to get you to understand something. Right? Her position is that men let her down. I'm just coming back at it to say you let yourself down because you expected something that couldn't be. She ran off to Mexico, and this is all I know about Michelle Wallace is what she has written in that book. She went off to Mexico to live with a guy. Her mother didn't like it, and her mother asked her to come back home. And she says that, I mean, the way she talked about her mother, if I had a little 17-year-old daughter running off to Mexico living in a commune, I'd go down there and kick her ass 5 different ways. I would have done the exact same thing. No, I thought her mother was right. Because when she needed money, she called her mother, but she didn't want to hear anything, you know. And all of that, but all of that comes at the end of the book. And Michelle's solution, as she puts it, to the black woman's problem is that we have to become feminists. That has to be a joke. Black women have always been. There's no feminist issue that black women haven't led. But if she's saying that we have to follow the Robin Morgans or the Gloria Steinems, she's crazy. Because that'd just be like hustling backwards. We have been the leaders in terms of where women are going. Black women have led the way. There's no question about it. And what we have to do is continue to do it, to continue to help black men adjust to it, and to continue to encourage our white sisters to encourage their men to grow up too. But we are already, no, it's true, we are already so far out. Where the black woman is, historically, is so much further along that for Michelle to come back and say what you need to do is an insanity. I thought it was a very insulting book. I didn't like it. An answer to your question. It's true. Whatever you do.
First of all, I'd like to say I really enjoyed it. And second of all, I cannot empathize with what you said, but yeah, I can sympathize because I don't want to say that I am not prejudiced, but if I am prejudiced against anyone, it's those who are prejudiced. What the question is on the election day is there was a shooting down in Indianapolis where a 15-year-old boy was shot, and it is getting, national review and everything. And I was wondering, what is your feeling like, since it is getting, more popular every day, is this just the time that this is going to happen, or is this just one incident? Do you think it'll change? Do you think now people actually stop and look and see what we are doing to our fellow people?
I can only say that I hope so. There have been a number of shootings. I don't have to recount all of that. I think that things will continue until somebody says it should stop. Now, I am hopeful that it does not continue at the rate that it is, because the black community, I can assure you, is not going to take it. And we've already, we've already had one action in Miami that frightened everybody. We had an action in Chattanooga. We had 2 young boys to be shot in Cincinnati, and they've just arrested who they think is the killer. And we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see what the community does. I am one who cheers for the black community. I just like to be very clear on my position. I cheer for us because I know that it is intolerable that if we continue to let people come into our community and shoot us, then that will go on and on. So there must be some response. I would rather somebody told the white community that this is not a good idea. It's just not going to work, because at the end, and I can say this historically and with absolute assurance, nobody will kill anybody off. At the end, there will be one black, one white, one man, one woman, one Jew, one Catholic, one whatever, one Palestinian, one Israeli. There's going to be one left, and the one that's left is going to make peace. So the question is, how many have to die before we reach that point? It would appear, which is what I was trying to say in my opening remarks and what I believe personally, that man would utilize his brain, which we are doing at just about 10%, and obviously that is insufficient. We're going to have to pump it up to 15 or 20%. That we would recognize that this is no good, that we cannot continue to function on our fears. Because hatred is just simply based, as we well know, in fear. People respond because they are afraid that somebody's going to get something that belongs to them. First of all, 20% of this nation owns 80% of the wealth. So there's almost no point in any of us who are living in Indiana, for God's sake. You know, this isn't one of your rich states. There's no reason for any of us to be fighting with each other. We have a problem with 20% of the people, and we should be talking to them. That, you know, it's Eli Lilly and the rest of the world. Where I live, Eli, you know Lilly, right? That's what it is. They're making pills, 5,000 pills for 2 cents and making a fortune off of it. Where I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, is Procter & Gamble and the rest of the world. P&G has enough money that they put aside some $400 million up front for the Rely tampon situation, for the people that they're killing. And then they want you to pat them on the back. They said, you see what we did? We put the money. And say, what the hell? You killed people. You know, and then they had an article in the paper today I was just reading. It said, well, the greedy lawyers are going to try to get more. You're damn right. Of course the lawyers are going to get more, because women buy it in good faith. Can you imagine if they had been killing men with something like that? I'm serious. But because it's just a few women, something like 12 in every 1,000 who die, what's the big deal? That's not right. That's all I'm saying. And I find that racial prejudice is useless. That's all I can say. I would hope that everybody finds it useless. But for those who don't find it useless, those of us who don't want to be victims will respond. And some of us, like me, will cheer for us when they do. I will not be surprised when Indianapolis or Cincinnati, Ohio, or Knoxville, Tennessee, or Nashville, any place. I will not be the one. I'm not Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young. I don't feel that my righteous position in life is to run and tell black people to cool it. I don't. I think that our job is to stop the insanity, because if we can stop those insane people early enough, everybody will benefit. If we let them go on, all we'll get is a further division of the black community and the white community, which will not be useful. And at the end, those of us who have survived will say, you know, there's an old joke. Can I tell you an old joke? It's a terrible racist joke. As a matter of fact, I like the old black jokes because they're funny. This is a slave joke. No, they are. You know, what the hell? I mean, you get to the point that you got to take Little Black Sambo off the library shelves, Mary Poppins. I mean, we're not that damn delicate. I'm not scared of Mary Poppins. You know, leave it on the shelves. All these people burning books is crazy. But this is a black joke. There was a slave owner, had a big Negro. And I'm sure that the terminology was different when this joke was first told. And he said that his Negro could beat anybody. And there was this old white boy who had a big son. And he said, my John can beat anybody. So they decided that they would make a wager. And they would bring their two people together and that they would fight. So they had this big, you know, now this is a long joke, and I'm not that good with the whole thing because it's the punchline that I like. But you had this big white boy and this big black boy. And they were going to get into the boxing ring and they were going to fight. They said, well, how long should they fight? And old Colonel said, till it's sufficient. I said, start. So it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and they start to slugging, and they're bleeding, and they're tired, an hour goes by. They're slugging and slugging. It gets to be noon, and the sun is up, and they're sweating, and they're slugging and slugging and slugging. About 1 o'clock, everybody is about dead. It's like Rocky II, right? And the white boy said, it's sufficient. And the black guy said, man, I've been trying to think of that word for the last hour. I love it. I love it. It's not a bad joke. But that's the way I feel. It's sufficient already. So I would like to see us go forward. You know, at least we who understand cannot practice prejudice. It just doesn't work. And it's foolish and it's a waste of time. And it gives you ulcers. There was someone way in the back in the red.
Okay. I have a question. I've been wondering, what do you think about the Black English thing? It's been going on for a while, and strangely enough, it's in my classes, and everybody's saying, what do you think of Black English? Do you think it's a way to set Black people apart, or is it cultural, or what? What do you think?
I'm very non-supportive of the concept of Black English. I think that it is a problem for Black kids, because what we're saying is that somehow or another, they don't have to become competitive. Black English is not a language. It follows no rules. It is a dialect. And like any people, like the jazz musicians, for that matter, the poets, like anybody else, like the beatniks, we will all develop a way of talking to each other that is convenient to the group. But there is also a level of competition. There's no such thing as black basketball. You know, all of a sudden when it's going to be something that other people can benefit from our competing for them, then they teach us the game. But when it becomes something that we could benefit from our competition, then all of a sudden it's like, well, don't push them, because after all, they're speaking this funny language. We have educated in America, you know, Russians, Lithuanians, Germans. We have educated everybody. And all of a sudden we get to the late 70s and early 80s, and all of a sudden we don't know how to talk to little black kids because they got this strange language. I'm uninterested. I think that that's something that should happen within our community. We are interested in finding out about how we use language, how the black people use language. And we would study that, I should imagine, the same way as I say, because jazz is a very good, the same way the jazz musicians studied jazz, you know, the language of jazz. I'm not talking about the music, the language. That is like anything else. But in terms of the larger competition, black kids need to know how to read and write in standard English, because we have to compete with people who read and write in standard English. It has to be treated like any other sport, and we should excel because we excel at all others.
Actually, my question has two parts. And the first one is just, I'm interested, is there anything that particularly started you towards poetry as a method of expression? And the second part is, are there any poets you particularly admire?
I admire all of us. I mean, yeah, I do, because it's difficult to write. For those of you who write, you know that it's very difficult to write. It's difficult to bare your soul. There are very few poets that I don't at least appreciate the effort that goes into writing. I mean, it's like any other profession. I know what they go through, and I should hope that I'm accorded the same feeling, because there is an empathy for the profession, for the craft. I started writing because I'm totally unfit to hold a normal job. I like to write. It's true. I like to write. It's something that has been personally pleasurable to me. I do write better in 1980 than I did in, say, 1967 or 68 or something like that. I feel that I've grown and that I'm more in control of my craft, so that as long as I can do it, I probably will. It was just something that I thought I could do. And I thought, well, of all the things to do, why not try to do something I wanted to do first? Why try to change myself and learn how to, you know, work for PG or something like that, you know, or sell insurance? Why, if I'm going to do something with myself, why not try to do what I want to do? And then if I couldn't do that, I would go forward. You know, I don't really look back that much, you know, for me personally. I don't have a lot of regrets and things like that. I don't look back and say, gee, I wish I could have. I've always wanted to try to do that which I thought I should do. And if I was successful in doing that, I'm happy. And if not, I can never come back and say to myself, well, gee, you know, you should have tried it. You could have done it if you tried. I really have tried to do almost everything I thought that I could have done. I've not always been successful, but I don't mind, personally, I don't mind failing. I don't want to be, and I know people like that, I just never wanted to be, you know, 50 or 60 years old and saying I could have written, or I could have been a dancer, I could have been an actor, I could have done, you know. I just didn't want that to happen. I didn't mind if I couldn't do it, but I would have to know that. I would have to try it, and if it didn't work, that's all, you know. It's okay. It would be okay. I'm hard on myself to that extent, even now, that if something goes wrong, I'm comfortable as long as I say, well, okay, you tried to do it. It's only when I say, damn it, I knew I should have done A, B, or, you know what I mean? I knew I should have gone back to do it, whatever. That's what really, I don't like that. I want to finish it. So if it's wrong, then it's wrong. I say, well, what the hell? Because I feel that way. That I've done the best that I can do. And I always like to think that wherever you're getting me at 100%. And I'm saying I mean anybody that's dealing with me. Because then if it doesn't work, all I can say is that I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wasn't trying to do something. I wasn't pulling back. I was doing the best I could. Every now and then we all recognize that that's not good enough, for anybody. But at least you're trying. At least you're at 100%.
I'm impressed with your concepts on life and prejudice and stuff like that. But I tend to think that the people that need to hear you most, or hear people, like you say, leaders like people who go to college most, aren't in this room today. What ways do you think we should implement spreading the message so that it could be effectively heard? See what I'm saying?
I do, but I disagree with the premise. We never convert an infidel. It won't happen. And I think that what I was trying to say was not about who's not in this room with us or whatever, but about what we ourselves have to do. Because once we understand what we have to do, it really doesn't matter who doesn't agree or who is converted to our point of view. Nobody's ever converted. I'm 37, and if life has taught me nothing, I think I've learned two things. People are essentially not bright, and nobody changes their mind. That's true. And that's not a put down. I'm not talking about individual. I'm talking about as a group. And what happens is that we spend all of our time preaching to the unsavable, and we overlook those who would be our friends and who would go with us, and that's what's important. It's not those who disagree. It's what we will do. And when we were speaking to somebody, we just had a question on racial prejudice. All I'm saying, and that's my position. That's what I believe, at least, that it's what we do in response to that which is horrible that will either encourage that which is horrible or stop it. It's not what... In other words, there are many fools on earth. You will not change them. What you have to make sure that you don't do is join them. Make sure that you are not a part of your own oppression. It's true.
Let me thank you for taking your time and coming out here and spending a little bit of your life with us. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to speak to you on an issue that I feel is pertinent right now to everybody sitting in this room. It's been over 12 years, going on 13 years, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has been assassinated. Personally, I feel like Congress and government officials have shown that they personally don't give a damn about passing legislation of making January 15th, his birthday, a national holiday. Personally, I'm tired of it, and I want to see it passed, and I want to see it passed now. Could you comment on that, please?
Oh, well, I am very, very supportive of all holidays, first of all. That's true. I believe in them. For as far as Dr. King's birthday has been concerned, since he has died, and I do have a son, I know I mentioned him. One of the things that he and I have done is we have honored that. It's just simply a day that he misses school, but he misses school any other time I want him to do something. So I keep him with me, and I'm usually in Cincinnati because that's where I'm living now. I honor the holiday. I don't have the power to force Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan or anybody else to pass a law, let alone, you need 535 members of Congress. I can't do that, but I know that I can do what I do. And since we live in a society that honors everybody else's holidays, and everybody else gets to stay home, from the veterans to, you know what I'm saying, to whatever, from Thanksgiving on. There's 8 million holidays that Americans have. I think that we who are black, it just goes back to his question. If we want Martin Luther King's birthday to be a holiday, if we stayed home at 80% on one day, it would be passed, because that level of defiance is unacceptable to the federal government. They would rather pass it and say, do it. But you and I haven't made up our minds. Now, you and I will stay home because we're sick, because we got somebody new to screw, because we didn't feel like going. Excuse me. We stay home for 8 million reasons that don't make sense. And if somebody said, January 15th, why don't you? I can't afford to be docked. We have to make up our minds how we feel about it. It's been going on for some time. Stevie Wonder's new album, which is absolutely brilliant, as always, because God knows he is brilliant. And, of course, Wonder did it in reggae. We have heard the new album. Wonder did it in reggae. And he's right, and I'm glad that Stevie did it, because if anybody can make it musical, Stevie can. But you and I will have to decide, do we want it to be a holiday? If we do, let's stay home. Black Solidarity Day. What happened to Black Solidarity Day? Same thing. Black people are all going to work and say, well, everybody else is going to stay home. You You have to make some minor sacrifice. For what your paycheck means now, staying home is nothing. It's not like you lose, a day's pay is nothing. I mean, it's not like you're losing anything. But we could do that, sure. That's my comment. We could do that. And I believe that we could. I don't think it's that difficult. We just haven't made up our mind that it's that important. It's our holiday.
My question for you is, I'd like to know what makes you so aware of the factors around you?
I can think.
Okay.
No, it's not a put down. That's what I do best, I think. And I am not insensitive to anybody, I don't think. There are, I suppose in a way I could be tough if it came to that. I've lived through a lot. But for the most part, I prefer to deal with people like I prefer them to deal with me. And it's just, you just get my evolution. You catch me 5 years from now, if I should be around and be invited to Purdue, we may get a different feeling. But it finally hit not just my head, but my heart, that what we're talking about here, and you kind of forget it. You live in, it's kind of funny. I mean, I don't want to do this to you, but we live in a world that we use so many euphemisms. 5 guerrillas were shot. We got 2 terrorists. You know what I'm saying? Nothing says these are people. And we've been living in a world that sort of ignores people. I was watching the election returns, and of course it's always funny because I'm looking at all 3 channels. And what it is, John Smith was elected, Roberto Clemente was elected, and then A. Black. All of them did that, didn't they? And somehow or another, A. Black had no name, had no sex, had nothing, just A. Black. And you begin to think, what the hell are these people doing? These are human beings we're talking about. And it's just where I am right now. I just keep thinking, geez, if we can just understand that we're talking about human beings. Now, there are lots of ways, and I don't want to preclude anything because I think that I would be less than honest. There are lots of ways to talk to people. The nicest way is through our mouths. But there are other ways to send a message. I just hope that the message is received as we discuss it through our mouths. Otherwise, we're going to be someplace else that's going to make everybody unhappy. And we know that. You don't have to be bright to see that. And you can see that tensions are building up. I'm not trying to downplay tensions here. I just think that they're personally foolish. That we who care are going to have to take a stand because those who don't care are taking a very big one. They're making a statement. So we who care have to say, now wait a minute, there is something more. We're not going to go back to that place. We're not cavemen. We're not barbarians. We're something else. We're human. And I just don't see how people can look at the world and fail to understand that all we're talking about is each other.
Earlier you were talking about the way that black women are so,
Terrific.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just go on, and I would like you to elaborate on that. Really say where the black woman stands today and how far advanced we are.
Oh, we have a long way to go. We're low woman on the totem pole. Out of the 4 big groups, if I may use groupings according to race and sex, it's white men, white women, black women. And when you get to the black woman, you even have a bigger drop because the gap is closing right now statistically between white women and black men. But you get to black women, it's way down. And I think one of the problems of being a black woman is that we have done so much that people keep looking for us to do even more under the same circumstances. And I think that that's very, very difficult. I think that young black women have a problem because you are marrying later, if at all. I applaud that, being a single woman. I think that you have to think your way through and how you're going to conduct your lives. Too many black women today, in my opinion, are worried about competing with black men, but black woman competes with everybody because she still is the one that has the black children. And nobody is there when she does. She's really there by herself. We are there with each other, but that's about it. We are very, very much alone. We have the worst statistics. We are more likely to die in childbirth or with a bad abortion. We are more likely to see our children die within that first year of life. We are the most raped female on earth. And I think that, we're going to have to deal with that something has to turn around. And a part of that turnaround is that we have to decide that it is not our righteous duty to take everybody's crap, that we can stand up for ourselves. I'm hoping that those of us who are bright in this room won't decide, well, I don't want to try to go to law school or something, or whatever. I don't want to be an engineer because I'm taking some black man's place. You're not taking anybody's place if you get it, but yours. And, if you fool around with guys and with your girlfriends who tell you, well, gee, you really are aggressive, yes. Don't let people put you down because no matter how far the black woman goes in the next 20, 30 years, she's still going to be way down because our statistics are just so very, very bad. We need to go forward. You have to remember, most black women are not like you. Most black women are not in college. They are not even thinking about it. They don't even have a possibility. Most of them are pregnant by the time they're 14 or 15 years old. They certainly have been sexually abused at that age. And we're going to have to reach, to reach to that young black woman, as I'm trying to reach to you, to say, don't get bogged down in somebody else's idea of what a woman is. Be what you are. That's what I was trying to say earlier. It is your body, it is your mind, and it is your spirit. Don't hold yourself back. Be a thoroughbred. If you're going to be in the race, run it. If you're going to lose it, let that be because you couldn't run fast enough. Don't give up yourself. Yeah. It's true. Everybody hear me? Yes, ma'am.
Ask you, I know many people in the art of writing, after a period of time, realize that their writing has improved, as you said. And have you written anything that you regret or would like to unpublish? And if so, why not?
Well, first of all, you can't live like that. If you start regretting what you wrote, then you're just regretting who you are. I think that I have improved. I think I write better. I think anybody who's reading me, if you see from my first book to my last book, you got to see that I write better, because if you can't, there's something wrong with one of us, and it's not me, because I write better. So, but I think all of that, being sorry, first of all, it's not where I live. It's not where my heart is. I try not to say things, and I try not to do things that I regret. I certainly would never have published a book, in which case you had plenty of time between conception, the writing, manuscript, and galleys to make any corrections that have to be made. So when I look back on my books, I really don't. I don't like some of my covers. I wish that they would change. I hate the cover on Gemini. I think it's real ugly. But I think it's a really good book. It's the best book that I could have written. I think if I wrote another collection of essays, I would probably write better, because I'm just getting softer and softer in how I'm looking at the world. And I have seen, as I watch myself, if I can say it like that, as I separate the writer from the person, I have seen that that's what I'm seeking. I'm looking for cotton candy. I'm looking for someplace soft, because it's really such a very hard world. And I just don't think that I want to participate in that level of hardness. I don't mind responding to what has to be responded to. If you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. There's no question about it. But I don't want to have to worry all the time that you're going to do something to me. I can't live in that space, that we have to say, okay, either you're my friend or you're not. Either we care or we don't. So that's where my writing has changed. But there's no reason to regret, in my opinion at least, anything that I've done previously. There are many poems that have not been published because I've considered that they're not good enough. And I laughed about Thomas, but I do almost have a new book, based on the poems that he threw out of Vacation Time, that he didn't think, quite made it for kids his age. I took his word for it. He's a kid. He should know. But if I would die or something, I'm sure my mother would put it in book form for me, like, Lorraine Hansberry's To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. What's his name? Her husband put, Nemiroff put together the book, based on her writings that were not previously published. I'd be happy to do that. But I think, at my age, my God, if I'm running around saying things that I regret, I've got a problem. It's just not what I do, because I know what I'm saying. I haven't stumbled into anything. I understand the words that I use. I speak English. I'm logical. So I don't have any reason to, I have a reason to improve, but no reason to regret. No. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Nikki, I just want to say, as a fellow member of the human race, I think you're beautiful, and I love what you're doing, and keep doing it.
Oh, thank you very much. Delighted. Are we finished? Yeah. Are you going to tell me? We have to go. I understand my sorors are giving me a reception. Woo-hoo! So thank you. We have to go.
Can we have a round of applause for Nikki? For those of you who are interested, every year we do recognize Martin Luther King's birthday on January the 15th on a day called People's Day. And this next year on January the 15th, we will be in Fowler Hall at 8 o'clock to observe his birthday. And I think the important thing is for all of us to come out to support this, to ask your public officials to recognize it, your mayors who serve